Did you hear the one about the Japanese cannibal? Some true stories are disturbing because of what happened. Others are disturbing because of what happened next. Tonight's story is often repeated for shock value, but the shock wears off quickly. What doesn't wear off is the certainty. This is a case where the disgusting crime is not debated, the abhorrent confession is not questioned, and the ridiculous outcome is still difficult to accept. Driver here. Buckle up, we're going to Japan for a rather gruesome true crime story, my friend. I hope you brought your appetite. In June of 1981, a Japanese student named Issei Sagawa was living in Paris. I hope I pronounced that correctly. If I'm butchering it, I do apologize. He was enrolled at the Sorbonne, he lived alone, and he was not hiding his identity. The victim was Renee Hartvelt, a Dutch student. Sagawa invited her to his apartment under the pretense of studying. Unfortunately, he had other things in mind. After killing her, he committed acts of cannibalism. This was not alleged later. It was admitted by Sagawa and confirmed by investigators. When asked about Renee, Sagawa had this to say, and I quote, "When I think back on how gentle Renee was, I ask myself why I did what I did. And there's no end to my feelings of bitterness. But I wanted to eat her. That doesn't mean I wanted to kill her, but I came to the realization that in order to eat her, I had to kill her." Unquote. He later stated, quote, "What I truly wished was to eat her living flesh. To this day, I still think, if only she had let me taste her just a little bit. I want to eat her. If I do, she will be mine forever." Unquote. Now, my friend, the details of those acts are documented in police records and the medical examinations, but they will not be described here. I wouldn't want you to lose your lunch in my car. What matters is that the crime included cannibalism and that this fact is undisputed. Here's where things get really strange. French police arrested Sagawa shortly after the crime. There was no attempt to flee, no denial, no alternate explanation. As a matter of fact, he confessed. This is one of the rare cases where investigators did not need to reconstruct the events. The sequence was known. Responsibility was clear. At this point, many assumed the story should have ended, but it did not. Under French law, a person deemed legally insane cannot be tried in a standard criminal court. Psychiatrists evaluated Sagawa and concluded that he met that definition. As a result, he was committed to a psychiatric institution, not sentenced to prison. As a reminder, he has confessed to eating a person, but due to his mental status, he basically got away with it. This was a legal decision, not a failure to acknowledge the crime, however. The French system considered the case handled through confinement and treatment. But one critical thing never happened. They never had a criminal trial, and there was no conviction. It's important to be precise here. Sagawa was not free during this period. He remained confined in France for several years in a secure psychiatric facility. The case disappeared from public discussion. Most people assumed that confinement was permanent, or at least indefinite. Legally, however, the case was incomplete. Eventually, the French authorities decided to deport Sagawa back to Japan. This decision was administrative. Crucially, France never formally prosecuted the case in criminal court, as I've mentioned. Without a conviction, there was nothing to transfer to Japanese authorities. When Sagawa arrived in Japan, prosecutors reviewed the case in full. They did not question what happened. They questioned what they were legally allowed to do. So, get this. Under Japanese law, a citizen cannot be retried domestically for a crime already addressed abroad. Even though the crime occurred in France, it had already been resolved legally through psychiatric confinement. Japanese authorities briefly confined Sagawa for psychiatric evaluation. Doctors determined that he was mentally competent under Japanese standards. Now, at this point, there was no remaining legal mechanism to detain or prosecute him. So guess what happened? He was released. This is the part of the story that continues to disturb people. I know I sure am. Sagawa committed murder. He committed cannibalism. He confessed. And yet, he never served a criminal sentence. In Japan, he became a public figure. He wrote books. He gave interviews. Now, the public reaction was not celebratory. It was confused, angry, and uncomfortable. Legally, however, the case was closed. Not unresolved, just closed. And poor Renee Hartfelt never received the justice she deserved. Today, this case appears in legal textbooks and academic discussions, not because of its violence, but because of what it exposed. The limits of the insanity rulings, the gaps between international legal systems, and the difference between truth and accountability. This is not a mystery. It is a documented collision between law, medicine, and jurisdiction. Every system functioned as designed, but the outcome still feels wrong. To be completely transparent with you, my friend, the reason I wanted to tell this story is because Sagawa and I share a birthday. We were both born April 26. I will confess to being a meat eater, but I've not had human flesh, and I have no plans for it anytime soon. or at all. Sagawa went on to write 4 books, including a graphic manga about his time with poor Renee, and he goes into details. If you are so inclined, you can see a sample on Amazon. This video is not sponsored by Amazon in any way, just FYI. Despite everything, he did become a celebrity of sorts. He was the author of a weekly column in a widely circulated tabloid newspaper, and he appeared many times on television, as well as appearing in a few pornographic magazines. Sagawa was once quoted as saying, "The public has made me the godfather of cannibalism, and I am happy about that. I will always look at the world through the eyes of a cannibal." End quote. Later in life, Sagawa claimed he regretted his obsession, and he felt that being forced to live as a known murderer was punishment enough. Sagawa is no longer with us, but it sure took karma a long time to get to him. He died from complications of pneumonia on November 24th, 2022, at the age of 73. He once said, and I quote, "It's still a mystery to me how so much of my life has not gone according to plan, but that day did. I feel bad for saying it, but it went so well." End quote. Most stories like this are remembered for what someone did. This one is remembered for what the law could not finish. The facts are clear, the responsibility is clear, and still there is no sentence to point to. So if you're driving tonight and the road feels longer than usual, remember, some of the most unsettling stories aren't unsolved. They're solved completely by systems that have nowhere else to go. I'm feeling a bit peckish. How about you?